Hi, Michelle. Welcome to the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast.
I am so happy to be here. Thank
I'm
you.
excited to have you. Well, we always dive into the show with it's a little with some words of wisdom from the Happy Healthy Caregiver jar. So, wanted to get your thoughts on this
Okay.
today's inspiration. So, there's refills where people can make their own jar, or they can because this is just it's nice to have a little encouragement in your day. So, and I'm still kind of a paper person in a lot of
Me
ways.
too, 100%. I can't
Yeah.
get over being a paper person.
I know. So this quote is from Winnie the Pooh.
Yes.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so it says, "You can't stay in your corner of the forest waiting for others to come to you. You have to go to them sometimes."
That's perfect, actually. Yeah. I
I think
mean,
as caregivers, it's a good reminder, right? Like sometimes I feel like we wait and wait for someone to come and say, "Oh, you look like you could need some help." And really, it's the opposite. Like we just have to, people are not mind readers and they have a lot going
no.
on these days.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's reaching out, right? So this is also something that I started doing while actively caregiving because I would get really just kind of frustrated and overwhelmed with things. And I can't remember where I heard it, but somebody was like, have you taken the time just to send a letter to somebody that you haven't talked to in a long time? So
Mm.
like going back to you and I are both like paper, but being a pen pal. And so it wasn't as reactive and it wasn't as current, but I sent out letters. And so since caregiving, every month I have a list of letters of people that I haven't spoken with in a long time. And I just send them love letters in the mail. And I love stamps. So it kind of combines all these lovely things that I like to do.
I mean, there's nothing like snail mail that's not junk mail.
And
Um,
yeah, I mean, how many times did you open your mail like as a caregiver and you're like, I don't want to see what's in the mail? Like, I just wanted to give people a little gift and I sent it out almost in hopes of getting things back. And I started getting letters back. And that was just like the best for me.
It's a
Yeah. And
good a reminder to me my brother's got a is neurodivergent and very isolated in a lot of ways and seeks friendship, and it's a good reminder for me to tell him, like, don't forget about snail mail. Like you would get mail back. I think he would really enjoy that. There's some, you can see, if for those of you who are watching on YouTube, that there's some cards behind me, but I have a friend, Jen Chan, she's been on the show before,
oh,
who,
yeah, I know Jen. She's great.
yeah.
Yeah,
So she
yeah,
makes caregiving cards. So if people
yeah.
are out there and are listening, they're like, "Oh, that's great, the snail mail idea," and you want to send something encouraging. There's some great caregiving cards that she
Yeah, she's
offers.
amazing. I really do recommend reaching out because she's been through it too. So she gets it. She gets the heart.
She gets it, and I've not seen anything like that in Hallmark before, or anything like that. So, yeah, a good reminder. Recently, even on social media, a girlfriend from Penn State reached out and replied to something of mine, and the way she said it, I was like, I can't just reply back. I haven't talked to her in a while, and I literally was just like, I got to pick up the phone. I'm gonna talk to her, because it's just like you wait, and you're like, well, maybe she's working, or maybe she's doing this, and it's like, no. Sometimes you just
Yeah,
send him a text. I'm thinking of you, whatever it is, like that. Well, listen. So that's our first call to action: is just
yeah,
reach out and touch someone
yes, yes.
through a phone call or sending a letter. I introduced you, Michelle, as a serial caregiver in the introduction, and um, funny in a funny way, we just are finishing up, my husband and I, the Jeffrey Dahmer thing on Netflix, which is a bit disturbing, but
Oh my
and
gosh, yes.
and I was like,
I
a
don't know
ser-
if
a
we're
ser-
ready.
I know, a serial caregiver, hopefully has a different connotation than being a serial killer, but you've had a lot of caregiving in your life.
I
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us, like, you know, what is it like to be a serial caregiver? Like,
well, sometimes you just don't know, right? Like I was 16
mm,
when my mom first got breast cancer. So I was 16. That was 1984, just dating myself. And my dad was a pilot and my sister was in Spain. So it was pretty much just because my sister was doing a language immersion program. Anyway, so it was just me and my mom. And that's when I started caregiving. And my mom had breast cancer reoccur 4 times. And so I was her caregiver 4 times. By the time I was 25, I had taken the Family Medical Leave Act to take a month or so off when my mom had one of her final surgeries. And then it was kind of calm until like 2008. And that's the first time my sister got diagnosed with breast cancer. My sister, who was 18 months older than me, she was like my best friend.
Mm.
And if you notice, I'm using her in the past tense there. So I was with Karen 4 times. She had breast cancer 4 times. It started at 42. By the time she was 50, it was killing her. So she had metastatic breast cancer. Yeah. And
I'm
so,
so sorry, Michelle. When did Karen pass away?
2017. 2017 was a really,
Was
it was
your
a really hard year. Um, because Karen died, and she was like the purest person. Like she did everything right. She did, like, she had the kids, she never drank, she never smoked, she was a vegan, she was pure. Karen, like, truthfully was a pure person. And I was a little bit more of the hellion. I was, and I think it was because I'd seen so much at a young age that I was like, I know life is short and life is precious. So I was a little bit more intense. And Karen, yeah, when she got sick in 2016, actually 4 months after being declared cancer free. So it was quite shocking. There was nothing to prepare us for her coming down with metastatic cancer that would crush her spine
I'm so
4 months later.
sorry. Well,
Um,
and no apologies for your feelings. Like I leak frequently on this
yeah,
show because it just means we love these people.
yeah, she was, you know, still my touchstone, still my rock, and it was an honor to be that for her. And so I adopted her daughter, my niece, right when she collapsed in October of 2016, and I adopted my niece because she was 16, the same age I was when I started caregiving for my mom, which is just an odd bookend in my life.
Yeah.
And then so Faith, my niece is in high school and she's 16 and just, she's coming in hot. I mean, she's scared, she's angry, and she's pretty accomplished. She was, doing pretty well, but that was pretty rocky. And of all the things I would be grateful for during the rest of what happened in 2017, because 3 months after Karen died, my mother got diagnosed with metastatic lung cancer, which came up out of nowhere, really. I know it was grief. I mean, we all were just so shocked that Karen was the one that got sick and then succumbed to it, because my grandmother, like my mom's mom, had had breast cancer 4 times, like in the 50s, and she survived. So it was shocking to us that somebody didn't survive, and specifically the strongest person in the family, right? So
Right. And we
that
have
was,
so much stuff now that we didn't have then.
I know, I know. So it was super confusing. And then, so my mom passed of lung cancer. I always say she passed of grief. They both died in the same hospice facility here in
Mm.
Portland, Oregon. And then my dad was still with me at the time. And I begged him to stay. I was like, please, I know what happens, because he was so in love with her. I mean, my mom and dad have one of those like 1960s, like, romances that's incredible, because my dad was a fighter pilot and he saw this beautiful blonde lady driving in her car. Turns out they were in the same wedding anyway. I think,
Aw.
and that's how they got together. But his dog died in October of 2017, and my niece started to really act out. She was really having a hard time adjusting. So I'm very grateful that I had my niece with me, because she really, I don't know if through all of that loss, I could have made it as well as I did without having the responsibility of her, without having the love that I had for her, and I made a promise to my sister, and my sister was like staring at me. She was like, promise me you will take care of her. Promise me you will carry her. Promise. And I was like, I've never meant more in a promise than that promise. And I was like, whatever it takes, sister, whatever it takes, we will do this. We will do this to the best of our ability.
I have no doubt that you are. And to your point, like it gave you, kind of this purpose. to your life of to
And
can
a
you know
lot
carry
of
this.
details and a lot of, she was acting out. I'm not saying she's a saint. She she gave me a lot to pay attention to.
Well, and you and Michelle, did you have children,
I
biological children of your own?
No, I have two stepkids. I actually decided not to have children because I knew breast cancer ran in my family. And this is before
Yeah.
genetic. I mean, I didn't have to look past my dinner plate, honest to goodness, because of my grandma and my mom and like all of my aunts on my mom's side, 100% have had it. So I was like, I am not giving this to anybody. This stops with me. My sister, she chose differently and she was very optimistic. She was so optimistic. Like if I can counter this demon in our family with good, clean living. And I was like, I don't know. I think this demon requires some poison, you know,
Mm,
some, this cancer in our family is not, it's not something you get to choose or not choose. In my
yeah.
family, it chooses you. So then, just kind of
Well, I
fast.
respect that decision that you made. And have you been able to, I'm sure you are get your
Oh
exams
God,
and
yes. Oh God.
yes.
I mean, except for this is what's so crazy, right? Like, fast forward to like 2019, my dad had made it as far as he could. And my dad was a retired lieutenant colonel. He was an Air Force fighter pilot, Silver Star. I'm sorry, Silver, the Distinguished Flying Cross. He got the Distinguished Flying Cross like Charles Lindbergh and Amelia Earhart have for like rescuing the first. I think he and his squad actually rescued the first Medal of Honor winner in Vietnam. And that's
Wow.
about the time I was born. So it was about the Tet Offensive was when I was born. And so he was exposed to a ton of Agent Orange, a ton. Like there's pictures. But when you have a military person, this is the other thing is I'm a daughter of a distinguished military veteran. And so not only as a caregiver for my sister and my mother, which requires a very specific type of behavior and the changing of the relationships from mother to person that you take care of or sister I looked up to because I'm the youngest to someone I'm carrying. Like I was literally carrying my sister. um when my dad got sick, there was a lot that you have to do for distinguished veterans and who you have to alert, and he was being very cagey about it. My dad he was sad. He wanted to go see my mom. And I know it because he died of a type of cancer that's very specific to people who've been exposed to Agent Orange.
Mm,
And it's curable if you want. But my dad waited and I knew something was wrong. I thought everything was going to be better because, like, in your podcast, you're like, find that one thing or those three things that make you feel better. And if you have time and you can do it, do it. My dad and I, for our healing adventure, honestly, in 2019, he said he wanted to go see the Panama Canal because he's kind of a dork when it comes to engineering feats and marvels around the world, right?
yep.
And so I booked us on a cruise, and this was 2019, right pre-pandemic, folks, right? And we went through the Panama locks, and it was crazy. We got to ride. I paid the extra. Let's ride up on the engineering decks. Let's
You're
marvel.
living it. You're doing it.
And we took some of my family's ashes, and I don't know if this is legal or not, but we put them in the lock. you know,
I mean, what are you gonna do? You can't suck them back out. So
I know,
yeah.
right? And then I'm not kidding you. The month after we got back, it was like he made his mind up and he's like, and I'm out of here.
It's like
And
his bucket list. I mean, it's got to be hard for you, Michelle, and I'm not trying, as much as you're willing to talk about it, but it's like you've had all your immediate family, your mom, your dad, your sister, like, um,
and I
and
was, yeah,
and it's you and your niece, thank goodness, you know.
we're the leftovers, as I affectionately call us, and, and my dad's other dog.
You're the torch carriers for your family legacy in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that, and it's no doubt that you are a serial caregiver, and you've showed up continually for all of these people, and how I know that that was not easy, particularly while working full time, and
Well,
um,
I did get let
Oh,
go
you're ever, oh, you, well, did you
from
get
my
let go?
first job because I couldn't, I mean, there's no way I could do it. My first job, like when not my first job, but the last job that I had before I started getting into the caregiving kind of technology support career, I was in,
Yeah.
I was in advertising and marketing. No, I mean, anybody who knows, anybody who works in an advertising agency knows you get 3 days off for bereavement.
I
You
mean,
don't
most companies
get
that way, like I can't even understand that. I mean, any good boss gives you way more than that, but sometimes you don't have that.
no. And
No.
it asks a lot, and I don't know, honestly. I mean, I continued working through Karen's death, and I was the executrix. I am the trustee. I am the guarantor.
What
Trying to
is an
think of all the,
executive tricks? You're full of tricks?
I run the estate.
Well, and
So
I had a call recently from a friend of mine from years ago who was like, "Oh my gosh, Elizabeth, is there someone you can support?" I'm not very familiar with the executor part of it. Like my parents had their stuff together and they had a trust and it was fairly straightforward. My brother has a trust. It's fairly straight. My dad left us in a good spot, but she was overwhelmed by this. I can't imagine like what, and then your employer not being understanding of that.
well, I don't know. It was asking a lot. I mean, it was asking a lot of any employer to, I mean, I was my sister's primary caregiver. I was the person on call all the time. I was the person who took her daughter. I was the person who made I was her, what do you call it? Personal representative and her personal health care representative. So
Yep.
I was basically on call 24/7, in addition to trying to win new business and manage, marketing kind of initiatives. And honestly, at a certain point, I mean, I felt in my heart my priorities just kind of, again, like when my sister asked me to take over raising my niece, I was like, and I watched my niece one night. She was trying to write a letter because she was trying to get accepted to a college, and she's a very stoic individual. My sister was stoic too. I'm not. But Faith, she had these giant tears, and she was like, I'm trying to write a thank you letter. And I was like, I looked at her email. I mean, and she's a great student. She's just an amazingly determined young woman. But it had, like when you're going to send an email and you open it up and you put their name in the top, right? And then you start writing, and all she had in the subject line was, thank you very much for your time. And I was like, and she's like, now I just need to know what to write. I was like, first things first, sweetheart, take their name out of, what if you accidentally hit send? And she's like, nobody's gonna want me. And I was like, oh
Mm.
sweetheart, oh sweetheart. And I was like, let's close this and let's close my computer. And the easiest letter that I ever wrote, I wrote that night at 11 o'clock at night. And I was like, I've been given a job that's far more important than my career, and she needs me now, and I need to fulfill this promise. So they didn't fire me. They didn't let me go. I had to step back and go, even if I lose my house, even if I lose everything that I've ever worked for, even if I lose all my savings, this girl deserves help. And
Mm. You're
that
like,
was,
I'm all in. You're like pushing your chips all in. I love it.
you don't have I mean, I guess you do have a choice.
Yeah.
That's the choice I made, and I really went all in. And here's the happy news, Elizabeth. This year, like, what are we in? We're in like 2022 now. She went to college. She paid her own way. She had athletic and academic scholarships. She did it. She graduated magna cum laude. And now she's helping girls who are like 14, like 8 to 14 years old, who
Hmm.
are in facilities, like who like need extra care. It's failure to thrive. That's what she did with this. I mean,
I mean, it's often through your pain you find your purpose, right?
yes, yes, a
Yeah.
100%. And I feel that way about myself now too. And it was those little things like we were talking about earlier, like, because I know a lot of your focus on your podcast is, how do I maintain like even a granule of hope in the darkest of caves that I'm fixing to go into, right?
Hmm.
Um, and how do I support myself? And honestly, everybody has their own thing. I mean, the hardest thing I think I've ever had to do was honor and respect the wishes of my sister, my mother, and my father on the way that they chose to die, the same way you have to honor and respect their wishes on how they choose to live. Um, and even if that's getting them the perfect avocado, right? Like that's the only thing they want to eat. Okay, cool. I'm going to go find you the most amazing avocado I can get my paws on.
Is that a true story, by the way?
My sister, yeah.
The avocado? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that and the raspberries. I mean, she was in hospice. She was thin, and she was in and out of hospice for like 3 or 4 months. And there's like they call them renaissances. So like
Mm.
she was dying in January, and then I actually needed her to wake up, ironically, to make sure she signed some paperwork, because some people were not being very honorable with her daughter. Um, that's the other thing that there's the beauty. Glennon and Doyle, I think, says it the best way. It's wait,
Brutally beautiful.
brutal. It's brutal.
Beautiful. Yes.
And honestly, her words got me through so much. Her ability to communicate emotions in language that I couldn't find.
Your sister or your niece?
No, Glennon and Doyle.
Oh, Glennon Doyle. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
she gave me the language, like I didn't know how to describe what I was feeling. I was too afraid to give words to the pain. I was too afraid to give it voice. And I waited for that book to come out. Because
Love
I
Warrior or the other? Yeah,
Yeah, Love Warrior.
I'll link to him. Yes, I've read Love Warrior.
And that one, and
Untamed, I think I also read. Yes.
yeah, I mean, it's like when you go for a walk in the woods and you don't know where you're going, and you can be really scared and it gets dark. But if you can name one or two things on the trail, you start to feel comfort. Like, oh, it can't be so bad. That's an oak. That's a pine tree. That's a rock. And you can, with that ability to identify. I mean, I will say that that was the one thing I was not prepared for as a caregiver, was to lose my ability to communicate. I was so overwhelmed and I was so overwrought, that I couldn't, and I still kind of stutter because of it, because it was so much. And you have to learn all the language of the insurer companies. You have to learn all the language of their employers. You have to learn all the language. So it's payers, providers, of the hospitals and all of the specialists. And you have to translate that as the personal health representative. Not only did I have to do that piece of it, but then at the passing, it's like all the funeral arrangements, everything starts to fall. Then I'm the executor. Then I was the trustee. Then I adopted my niece. And then, you just kind of keep going on. When you're a caregiver like that, I call it the long tail of caregiving. So there's an emotional side of it, but there's also the fiduciary side. There's the, you are going to manage us. And I'm really happy that your family had things managed. I, honest to God, thought my sister had everything tied up. Other people sometimes don't behave well.
Well, and I am worried. I've got siblings, other than my brother, that I've got five siblings. One of them
Yeah.
has but lately I have been like kind of fixated on like, does everybody have their stuff together? I want to make sure that, we know what we're doing, not that I want
Yeah.
anything ill to happen to anybody, but it
It's
is.
that, right? Like that thing, like where you're like, well, if I plan it, that then the danger will come. No, no, no. Plan. Please plan. Show people you love them so much that you plan.
Yeah, so you can be present. That's, it's
So you don't have to be the account executive of somebody who you are in love with. You don't want to be their account executive managing all the details while they're dying. You want to remind them that they used to ride horses with you bareback in the wind, and you guys would chase fireflies. That's what you want to do.
yeah, you want to feed them their perfect avocado. You want to hold their hand, play their music, and
Sleep
just
in
be
their
present.
bed. Yes, and
Yes,
cuddle.
yes,
That's what
without.
you want to do, without saying, well, today you have these 5 things that you have to do. Because there is the business of the illness and the business of dying.
It's
And
exhausting.
preach.
It's exhausting. So, how are you still standing, Michelle? Like, what? I mean, you've got this responsibility for your niece, for sure. Now you've got, I know we're going to talk about your working with the caregiving technology space, but like, what gets you out of bed in the morning? Like, how do you? What does your habits look like that just kind of make you keep standing? Like, if someone's listening and like, how does she do it? Like, what is? What are you doing to
For
be able
so
to keep
many,
going?
I don't know. Honestly, I, I
I
don't
mean,
know.
you're beyond adrenaline at this point. Like it's, I mean,
Yeah,
would you ever say you burned out as a caregiver?
no. I mean, because I would gladly carry anybody else I'm in love with. I mean, I think like that. One of the lessons I would say, because my dad, when he died, so he got sick right when we got back from the cruise. So that was Thanksgiving of 2019, another crappy holiday. I hate holidays, by the way.
Yeah,
I do
yeah.
not wake up for holidays. I'm not a fan. But I don't know. I guess I don't know how to not wake up and see that, do you remember Gone with the Wind, Scarlett O'Hara? Fiddly dee, tomorrow is another day. And she
Yeah.
says it so pithy, but I remember thinking that I was like, gotta get up, you gotta try. You just have to try. Give it a try, sister.
Well, and look at all the hard things that you have done. Like when I look at your life, Michelle, and hear about your life, it's like, look at everything you have survived and in some ways even thrived through and learned to help somebody else through. Like that your pain has given you purpose.
It has, and it taught me so much. But you know, I, what was the other book that came out at the same time? It was Sheryl Sandberg wrote a book called Option B, and
Mm.
it's because her husband died when she was on vacation there. I think they were down in Cabo, and she had to fly home, and he had a heart attack on a treadmill. Like it was like a really devastating, sudden, unplanned, like super sudden. Um, and she had to fly home and tell her kids. Um, and she was like, I don't want to do any of this anymore because this is terrible. This is really crappy. But I think she has a friend who's a psychologist. It's a gentleman. Forgive me for not knowing the names, but
No, you're good. And I'll link to the books that we talk about
yeah,
in the
that
show
book,
notes.
when it came out, she was like, so what are you going to do if option A ends? What about option B? What about option C? Just
Hmm.
because it's not the one that you wanted, not the one that you dreamed of, planned of, hoped, kind of clung like hooked your lasso to that star. What do you do when that goes away? Option B.
What option are you on, by the way?
I'm on like option F or G.
I know, we gotta laugh about it. I
I know,
know.
no, it's good. It's good. I mean, and there was time I couldn't laugh. So and I will say, like, I know one of the things that I like filled out on your form was like sometimes what did I do to get through things? And I was like, sometimes you gotta admit horrible things and truths to people and then just say, oh my God, too soon, too soon. And I'm like making the jokes to myself, like, too soon, too soon. Is it too soon to joke about death? Is it too soon to joke about being left behind? Is it too soon to call myself the leftovers? So for the longest time I was doing hashtag leftovers. you know? But
Yeah. I
I
mean,
was my own audience at that point, and I had, have one good ear. Like, even if it's not the friends that you've had eternally, right? Find someone.
who's your someone now that, I'm sure it was your sister. Um,
Yeah. I mean, when all of my labels got reshuffled, and that's what I always say is like, am I still a daughter now that everybody's dead? Am I still a
yes.
sister? Am I, like, in your labels are gone? Am I still an executive? Am I still, you go through this crisis of identity when everything changes like that. And I have this one friend, and she's that friend that I've kept in my life because she always told me the truth, the painful truth. She saw things, but the reason I loved her so much was, and I mean, she's funny, she's witty, she's super smart, she's all the good things, right? And I've known her since I was in 6th grade, and we're like Mutt and Jeff. I'm 6 feet tall, she's like 5'4", and she spoke truth to me. And she was like, I know. And I was screaming in my kitchen one day. I was just scream crying. I was on the floor, just hot mess. And this was before my mom. This was like just about Karen and my niece. And I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. This is the job that I don't want. I don't want this. And she's like, you have no choice, Michelle. And she's gotten her this far. You just need to carry her part of the way. Karen has done her best. She
Yeah.
poured everything she had into her. And I was like, I don't want to do it without her. I feel guilty. Oh my God. And
Yeah, it's not.
my friend,
You just
it's like you have this one person who can see you as terrible, as you feel. And they're like, get up.
kind of like hold the mirror in front of your face and was
Mhm.
like, "This is what I'm seeing right now, Michelle." Like, yeah.
But
I
get
mean,
up.
what there was no option. You love this person,
Yeah.
you
No,
know, you're
I'm in love with Faith. I mean,
yes, and
there's
it's
a whole
like,
story about her. Like I got to deliver her during an ice storm somewhere in New
oh,
York, like in 2000. It was like this insane
oh, you were
situation.
already connected
Okay, no, I
from.
was the first person she saw. I got to name her.
I don't think. I mean, I feel like to your point, you didn't want to do raise Faith without your sister.
Mhm.
It was not your option. What was your option B? But yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
she's
sure that I'm sure there's been tons of lessons learned and all of that. And I'm grateful that you all have each other and you can, share those memories. And hopefully you talk. I think that the worst thing is when people don't talk about people after their
oh, I
past.
know, I know. And I mean, the other thing I would say, like as being healthy as you can be, like in the storm and like just the um find, if you have a therapist or like some type of podcast that you can listen to, that you can, even if it's just driving from home to their house or home to the hospital or home to the radiation appointments, or you know listen, just try,
Hmm.
and scream if you need to scream.
Those audiobooks are great too. Like, I mean,
Mhm.
I missed reading and I would do the audiobooks. And so we've given you some, if you like the
Yeah,
self-help type ones or some good ones to
yeah,
try.
yeah.
Yeah, you said don't cry and scream, pull
don't
over.
don't scream cry driving.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the realtors, because I had to dissolve my sister's estate to get the money into the trust for my niece. And he was calling me while I was driving. Karen had already passed and we were cleaning out the house. And I actually had to get on a plane to go to Toronto for work. And I was inconsolable. I was having a really bad day. And he told me something bad was happening at the house. And I just remember I'm going 75 miles an hour and I am hysterical crying. And he's like, Michelle, stop, stop, stop. You have to pull over. You're on the highway. I need you to get on the shoulder. Just stop. You're going to scare the other drivers. And I was like, that's a really great piece of advice, Ken. Thank you.
I'm sure he was, yes. I mean, it is. I mean, there's,
Have you been
okay.
there? I mean, have you done
Oh
that?
yes. I mean, I've been there. I've been, most of the times I remember like having those moments. It was, after leaving my mom in an assisted living, I used to say it was like putting her on the top of Mount Everest. I'm like, you've got your water bottle. I filled up this, like, you're good. You've got your program on. Here's your remote. Here's the phone. It's fully charged, like blah, blah, blah. Then I get in the car and I just like have it.
Yeah. And then you're like, 30 minutes later, you're like, okay, I know I have to be someplace. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
Well, and
no,
usually it was triggered honestly by her saying like, "Can't you stay and watch a movie with me?" And I'm like, "Mom, I gotta get up and my day begins at 5 a.m. I'm rinse and repeat." Like,
yeah.
that was sandwich generation for sure. But
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah.
it's
Yeah. So do you still have kids at home?
minor. No, I've got one on her, like she's on her own, off our payroll, we call it.
Yep.
And then the other, she lives in Chicago. She's a nurse. And then I have one at UGA. He's his third year student. So we'll see him this weekend for a football game
Awesome. Those are
at
fun, huh?
University of Georgia. Yes. I mean, I'm just so, but to your point, like, I think, do you find that you appreciate these, like, I know you said you're not a holiday person. You're probably like a sunny Tuesday person, like just like grateful in the moment for the little joys of,
Yeah.
because you've been through so many rough terrains.
I had to find, and I always call it nature church. Again,
Mm,
why am I grateful for my dad leaving me this other puppers, Callie? It again forced me to take care of something else, because I think as a caregiver, sometimes our external nurture muscle is just so big. It's so
mm,
powerful. I mean, like that is what's huge in me right now. And so I was really grateful for my niece, and I'm very grateful for,
Your dad's dog.
yeah, because
Yeah.
she makes me walk 3 times a day. She doesn't care. She doesn't care how I'm feeling. You know what? Girls got to go out. I don't have
Nature
a
bath.
backyard.
What'd you call it? Nature church. I call it nature
Nature church.
bath. Or
Yeah,
just like
yeah.
that is my sanity for sure, is
Listen
getting
to the
outside.
birds, go out and look at some trees, watch the seasons change. I remember, honestly, it was 2 years after Karen and mom and the other dog Chance had died. And I remember walking to the coffee store, and I knew like I had to like put on, my one thing was like, put on pants, get dressed. If you get dressed, maybe you can get out the door. Cause I was like kind of claustrophobic too for a little bit afterwards. I had a real hard time being in public because I
With the
cried.
pandemic or with,
Well, no, this was before the pandemic, which was even
okay.
worse. I mean, and I was having to be there for my nieces. You know, she was a sports person. She was Sporty Spice. You know, she was at volleyball games, and she was on the number
Sporty
one.
spice.
I know,
Yeah.
she was on the number 1 team here in Oregon. So I mean, like you and those moms are Uber moms. Like they show up big time. So all of them taught me, and like in many ways, they caught me. They were like, oh, here comes this woman who's only worked in advertising agencies up to this point, and now she's an instant mom, and she lost
Mm.
everything. How do we carry her? And so these strangers, people I didn't know, even actually helped pick me up because of my niece, because everybody was trying to carry her and get her, just get through this. This will go. You get to go on. And that's the good stuff. You're going to go on. But, you know, it takes a while.
It's
Really,
a tough time of life to, for that, for you when you're 16 to have to tear for your mom
I
and then,
tried to imagine, like, when I was 16, if my mom had passed, when I was first taking care of her with breast cancer.
mm,
I tried to, you know, I literally put myself in those shoes, and I went back and visited like the girl in my head. And I was like, I don't know what I would have done. But I had a dad. I mean, she didn't have either. So
yes, yes.
it's different. I mean, she was in a very unique position. And you know, if I can ever say I've done anything for my sister, is like I've tried to carry the person she loved the most in this world, you know, to the highest level I can.
Yes, you're doing it. You're doing it.
And she's a good soul.
Which I love it. Well, let's pivot and talk about your now you've got this career that kind of honors, it doesn't kind of, it honors your
Yeah.
experience not only in marketing and advertising, but also as a serial caregiver, family caregiver.
Yeah.
So how did you know? How did you find Circle of? Which I'm delighted Circle of, by the way, is a partner of Happy Healthy Caregiver. But how did you all connect there?
Well, actually, it started with Candace Smith from Caregiving or
Okay.
Caregiving. So a lot of people noticed, because like I said, I was in a career. A lot of people noticed I just disappeared. As soon as Karen got sick, I
Mm.
I just disappeared. And everybody's like, where have you gone? And so I went to a networking lunch. I used to work at WebMD Health Services, and it was a bunch of people from WebMD. And they're like, oh, you know, and you know, everybody's going around the table, and they're like, so what have you been up to? And I like, and I, they looked at me, and I was like,
Pass. Yeah.
I don't think you
Yeah.
guys really want to know. And they're like, no, 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 come on, tell us. And I started to tell them, and they just, nobody said a word. Um, and they just stared at me because it was December after Karen, my mom, and the dog, and they just looked at me, and they're like, how do we help you? And I was like, I don't know. I really, I just need to get my niece into college. I can see the door to get my niece into college, and that's the door I need to get her there. And they're like, no, 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 you need something for you. So one of the ladies who was the head of product that I had worked with, she knew of Candace. And she's like, I know this lady who's trying to do this technology caregiving app, and I think she could use you, Michele, because you know marketing and technology and you know the healthcare space. And I was like, I don't think I'm fit for prime time. I I don't know.
Were you
And
working at all at this point? Or you just like
now
you'd gotten dressed and gone to the networking meeting? Good for you.
I
Yeah.
had pants on and a shirt on,
Good.
and I was sitting with people. That was as far as I got.
Yes.
And yeah, so like 2 weeks later, I met with Candace. And so what was that? That was like 2019. And she was like, I have this idea. I'm going to do this. It's called Caregiving. It's going to like kind of go along the journey, the caregiving journey. And it's going to go along the Kubler-Ross like stages of grief. And I was like, well, who do you want me to call so you make this? And she goes, what? I was like, make it. Everybody needs this. I don't know if I've slept in a year. I honestly don't know. I go, but when I'm awake at 4 a.m. and I don't have the language and I don't know what's going to happen the next day, I'm terrified. I go, on top of like all of the things I know I have to do, I'm terrified I'm going to drop the ball. I'm terrified I'm not going to know what they're talking about when I walk into a room. So I needed something in my hand to keep me prepared. And I was like, I was that woman who had this stack of folders, the file folders, paper everywhere, social security numbers, blah, 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 falling.
You needed my data diary plus, which is another of my partners. So yeah.
And see, that's the thing, right? Like if this is our job now, is we get to find, and our friends who know us, every single one of my friends comes to me now for questions on their estate, on their planning, on their wills, on their kids' trusts. 100%. Like if there's any way I can spread any goodness in the world, this will be it.
To
And so
fast track them. That's what I'd like. Yeah, fast track you to the resources, and if we don't know what they are,
I'll find you a
likely
person.
know. Yeah, we'll likely find you someone that will get you at least closer. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you just helped me with that, like with a friend, right? Like in Georgia, who was having, his dad was dying. He's 24. I mean, like that's a Gen Z
Yes.
caregiver. They're wow. I mean, we all have our different skill sets when we come into the active caregiving, and if we're fortunate, we can know people who know people who know people, and that's kind of the forensics, like CSI Miami map of things, right? That happens when you're caregiving, because of caregiving for an adult is so different than caregiving for a child, because you don't have the permissions, you don't have the rights, you have to do a ton of paperwork to take care of anybody over 18.
Mm-hmm. And they have opinions,
and they are not going to let you do.
Yeah.
Like, what is one of the biggest things that I did is I honored their wishes. It wasn't my wishes. It wasn't me saying, I want you to go home because you want to die. I want you to stay here and take treatment because I want you to live, but you just told me you want to die. How do I do that? And it's real hard, like you said, like they have their own opinions. And you have to listen, because you'll realize that there's doctors that are not listening. You'll realize that there are accountants and estate lawyers who are not listening. And part of our job is translator, from somebody to the person you love, and from the person you love to that somebody who thinks they're trying to help. It's a translation thing. Anyway, so fast forward to caregiving. And the thing I love about this space is it was answering all of the questions that I wish I had answers for, so I could anticipate the next move. So I could have somebody who had done the research for me in advance. Somebody who, and I like to say it this way, and you would know, because what's the name of your organizations? The Daughters Organization? Daughterhood.
Daughterhood.org. Yeah.
Yeah. You know how you wanted to help other people, and you really want to keep helping them, but I want to help somebody from the perspective of, what would my older sister have done for me? What did I do for my older sister? How can I give that type of service to someone else? And that is what I'm going for. I'm not a technologist. I like them. I've worked with a ton of entrepreneurs and a lot of technology companies in my past, but when it comes to care technology and understanding the language of care, and how do we not make care a 4-letter word in the United States when it comes to an employer or in the family, like, are you taking care of this? How do we come to a place where it's love?
Yeah, you're loving them through this,
loving
them forward. It was a woman I had on recently. She says, loving through dementia is what she called her.
Oh, so good.
A link to Sheila's episode, but
no, she's amazing.
Yeah, this is life. Life is messy as hell. Yes.
And I don't know. I mean, I was a military brat, so I moved every 2 years. And I just remember telling somebody at one point in time, just kind of going back to what you said earlier, which was, how did you do it? And I was like, change was kind of natural for me as a kid. Every 2 years, every 18 months, we moved whether we needed to or not. My dad was in Vietnam. I didn't see my dad. My dad was a fighter pilot, very dangerous occupation. My mother was a stud. My mother was a stud. I can never say it enough. I mean, she had daughters and she would watch her husband's plane get shot up on the news. And it
Mm.
wasn't like today. You couldn't call them. There was no computers, there was no phones. You got to talk to them once a year, and there were letters. One of the things I have in my closet that I haven't been able to touch, and I asked my dad as he was dying, I was like, Daddy, I see you have two large boxes of letters there from you to Mama. What would you like me to do with those? And he goes, I want you to read them. And I was like, uh, they're still in the closet. I can't go there yet.
What do you think would have to be true in order for you to read them? I mean, obviously, it's not going to bring them back.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm so scared.
Maybe on their anniversary, or like sometimes I feel like an occasion is like a good.
I appreciate that advice. And I hope I can, I would love to get them published with all these great pictures that they have of each other, because they were such a romance, right? When you're raised with that type of fighter pilot driving the Jaguar, sees the pretty lady, drives her off the road, they get to talk and they're going to the same wedding. Within 6 weeks, they're engaged. He sent her pearls from Japan where he
It's
was
a
living.
Hallmark movie, frankly. Yes.
And the love that they shared in their writing over, like, God, what was that? 65 to 73, because he served all tours of duty in Vietnam.
Wow.
So I mean, he was, yeah. Oof. So yeah, I think maybe part of my resilience comes from watching him come back and raise daughters after seeing such,
Horror.
yeah, and being normal with us and saying, you can go ride horses, you can go swim in the lake, you can do anything you want, and I want you to travel the world and I want you to see the world. And he always said, you can. And I think that has a lot to do with, I just remember some days, like, I would wake up and I'm like, why are my eyes open? Ugh. You get real mad sometimes.
What
And
am
I'm,
I supposed to be learning here? That's what I used to say to
oh
myself.
my
Like,
God.
what am I supposed to be
Oh.
learning? Why, and I have not had as many,
No, I
rounds
think
at
it's a
this.
fair question.
Yes.
Like, seriously, no, that's the right. And I remember I was screaming in hospice. Like, I scream, cry quite a bit. Um,
It's
and
good. It's good to scream.
redheads are ugly criers. Anyway, so I'm like, oh, in the hallway. And this woman comes up and she's like, and it was when my sister had the resurgence, like she was coming back and
Mm.
she was being able to eat. So they were going to kick her out. And I was like, you can't kick her out of hospice. I'll pay. She'll hurt herself. She will fall and hurt herself. And you guys are just waiting for her to hurt herself because she doesn't fit to the right code for you guys to keep her here because she's getting better. You're going to punish her and put her in someplace else.
Well, you're the expert in her, which clearly, I mean, that's, I think if we can help change anything in the healthcare world, it's like, I mean, yeah, we've got our name now, right? This person's name on the form. Yay. But really, it's the actions around that. Like, it's more than just putting the name on the form. It's, hey, you're the expert in caring for this person. Like, what works best for this or that or the other? Or is this normal behavior? Like, just to
Yeah.
see the primary caregiver and to know that they do have this expertise
Yeah. In the person.
in the
Yeah.
person. Like, you
Yeah.
can't. So, did Candace ever? Did you start working with Candace?
Yep. So Candace and I, what was funny is, so we just started like hanging out and I was like, here's some people that you should meet. Here's what we should be doing. And my job in marketing was to make sure, I always consider myself voice of customer, and I am a chronic serial caregiver. So you bet your bottom dollar, I am like, I've got a point of view on how to
Yes.
talk with caregivers, not at caregivers, how to speak with them and take feedback from them. And I
Hmm.
really
I
hold.
imagine you don't also like those beautiful images of like us looking like caregiving is so fun and like we're all beautiful and made up and yeah, I know. I use real photos on my site. Like
I
it's
have an issue.
yeah, I get it. I got the issue too. Like
once you've been that sweaty and that angry, it's hard to see everybody being like,
Yeah.
I'm a caregiver. Anyway, and there are points of that. I mean, maybe if we can get so people don't go bankrupt, so they don't have to spend like what I did. I spent weeks and weeks and weeks trying to talk down my sister's $300,000 surgery bill so my
Wow.
niece could have a trust so she could go to college and start her life. I mean, I'm fighting for a 16-year-old against a huge hospital. And there has to be a conversation about that. Not everything is about money. There has to be a way to understand the complexity of people's reality. And if you have a 16-year-old who, yeah, they're like, well, she'll get her mom's social security benefits. I'm like, until she's 18, and she's turning 18 in January of her senior year.
That's
And
all it is?
that's it. So,
That's crazy.
so all of my sister's social security went back. Faith didn't get a, that's how it works. And until we can see the whole continuum, I mean, one of the reasons I want to go and talk with people, because I know I've only seen a piece of it. And I know
Well,
my
I'm
piece.
learning every day. Like I just learned
Yeah,
that. Like who knew? Like that's horrible. It's worse than we think sometimes.
it is.
Yes.
It is. So, like, if you die and you have somebody who is a child, they will get your social security until the day, and it is the day they turn 18, unless they are still in high school, and then it's the day they graduate.
But they can't have a beer yet.
Can't have beer.
Yeah, they can't have a beer, so but they're supposedly an adult at 18 and they can live financially on their own. I can tell you my daughter just graduated college and it even took her a minute to like, you help them,
Yeah.
until they can fly on their own.
I mean, and if they're lucky, they have people who help them do that, even if it's not their parents, right? Like, even, I mean, it's somebody in the
Mm,
community, see somebody and help them. And I will say that I'm very strong about that. And for circle of, like, so like when caregiving, like we moved on and we were positioning to be bought, and I thought that was so great. Candace did such a great job on that. While that was happening, circle of was, so we were a direct to consumer DTC, and I have a big background in DTC marketing and DTC communications. um, when
Maybe tell people what Circle Love is in case they don't know.
circle of is very similar, it's a full app. So if you go to your phone and it's 4 in the morning, and it's an app that helps you identify people you would like to have be there with you to help volunteer. So if you think about, like, I've got 2 people in my church, 3 people from my niece's high school, and an aunt in Texas, and all these other people, and they are interested in helping take care of my sister. What's interesting about Circle of is it didn't exist when I was going through some of this, and I was managing probably 14 different group text chats
Mm,
situations. This one lets you set up everything in one place. So you submit once.
yeah.
It helps
The
you organize.
updates, coordinate the care.
Yeah. It
Um,
also helps you, like, if I need somebody to bring me food tonight, because I can find a volunteer. Like, I can't cook. I have this 17-year-old girl who's an athlete who needs to eat. Can somebody help me? It allows people to actually automatically set up their volunteer capabilities too, and it
mm.
will auto recommend who
Yeah, or
can.
you have to work late, or you have a work meeting, and someone be at her volleyball game, or
Exactly. Go cheer sister on, right? Like, go get her. All of those things. Can you walk my dog? Can you watch my other kids? And during the pandemic, what got crazy is I was, as the stepmother, I was also the teacher. So at the time when my dad died and the country locked down, I had to take the kids in because they needed somebody at home to teach them school. We all had to go on to online learning. So this helps with all of those organizations. The interesting thing that Circle Up does that we were working on at Caregiving that we didn't have yet was it automatically updates your calendar, like your other calendar. Super
yes.
cool. I'm
Yeah,
like,
so that and
super
then you
cool.
like have it all in one place. Yes.
But it's
Yes.
secure. So, like, you don't have to have visibility into the Facebook or the Googles or the other
Hmm.
channels. and it's not being used for marketing or advertising purposes, right? And honestly, Circle Up did used to be an employer app. When I first got in with Caregiving, I was like, we should be an employer only app, because that was where I came from, right? Like
Well,
I
and you want people, I want someone to pay for it. I want the employers
yeah,
or the
yeah,
people with money, big pharma, whatever, to pay for the resources for family caregivers. And
exactly.
you're a business, you have to monetize. Like it is what it is. Someone's got to
It,
pay for this stuff.
I know, but Circle of, which was made during this, I don't know, in 2017, the same time my world was crashing down. They had some hyper innovation labs, Cisco hyper innovation learning labs down there. And Circle of was born out of that. In 48 hours,
Mm.
they came up with an app that they thought, and it was originally made for cancer caregivers, because they did a ton of research and intake with all of these hospitals. And what was the pain point was when in 2017, they interviewed all these cancer caregivers, cancer patients, and they said, well, when I go home, you're leaving it to me to translate everything to the people in my life and making me be the manager of every aspect of my care. And I'm exhausted. I've had chemo, I've had radiation, and now I have to manage and organize everybody around me. And so Circle of was called My Ways originally in 2017. And Cisco, it was all employer based. It was Walgreens, it was Cisco, like all these big things. But what happened during the pandemic in October of 2021, they were listening to the caregivers that were on the app. I think they've 70,000. I mean, a lot of people using this app. But a lot of people were complaining because they're like, well, I got laid off. I don't have a job. Like in the pandemic, a lot of forcing functions happened. I don't have insurance now. Now I'm on Medicaid.
I mean, I was furloughed during the pandemic for a couple months, so I get
Yeah,
it.
everybody loses it. And so they were like, well, we don't want to be just tied to employers. So they talked to the investors, and we have a hospital system that's an investor in us. And they said, we'll make it free. Just
I
make it
love it.
free.
So is that it will always be free?
Mhm.
And how do they monetize? It just has like backing.
Well, we have some really smart investors, and it's through what is it, Community Health Services in Indiana. I hope I said
Mm.
that. But they, and I'm sorry, my head, like I blank out sometimes. That's even better. Um, we are going to start working with affiliate partners and merchants that make sense for caregiving, like the people that you need. So it's one of them's care.com. One of them's like how do you find the things that you need? I wish somebody would have Googled for me, because like I said, I lost the language. I didn't
Yeah.
I
Well,
didn't know what I didn't know. And if we can put, and that's one of my purposes, I was like, can we please put things, literature and research and opportunities in front of people for what they really need, and they can decide whether or not. But you need to give them some foreshadowing. You need to say, you actually really do need to protect yourself legally. You do need to protect the people you're taking care of. And
right,
there's
right.
different levels of protection, and their pets, who's feeding the pets, who's going to take care of the pets if they can't go home, who's taking care of the pets if they can't walk them.
It's so, yeah. I mean, that, to your point, like the resources, I think of these like, I mean, professional home care, that all of that is good. But then there's the caregiving resources. It's the meals, it's the pet walkers, it's the dog groomer, it's the mobile, everything.
It's like, what's the
Um,
best hospital bed for my dad to put in the living room?
I
And
know.
he's 6'3". So how do I do that? And how I can't lift him. Who do I
Mm,
talk to? And so there's social workers at the hospital, right? But dude, when this was going on, the pandemic was coming. I couldn't get in touch with anybody. And
yeah.
frequently now, because of the pandemic, you still can't get in touch with anybody because the businesses have changed.
Well,
So
and they're short staffed. So it's like, and when you need it just in time, like you need it because
exactly.
there's too much to know it all. So you just have to like know the next thing. And
Yes.
it's nice to know that you can go to a place like Circle Love and it's got the
Yeah.
resources, and then also to connect to your
To
circle of
your
people, your
group.
circle of
Yeah.
friends to help you with that. Well, Michelle, we're running out of time. We got to talk about I'm going to go through the lightning round for
I know, sorry.
that's
I'm so
okay.
excited.
We'll link to Circle Up. We're going to link to a lot of the
Thank you.
different things that we mentioned in the show so people can get more information. Um, all right. What's your favorite exercise to break a sweat?
Spin class.
Ooh, I did my Peloton this morning. My
Did you
class
have
is
a
in the
Peloton? You're so saucy. Look at you with your
oh
Peloton.
I've been, yeah, we've had it for years, and
So
it's
awesome.
I love
They were
it.
my client when they first came out with,
Ah,
yeah, with one of their bikes for the Tour de France. Yeah. I-
nice. Yeah, it's a great option
yeah.
for caregivers if you can afford it. It's
Yeah.
a, what's your favorite time of day and why?
Sunrise.
You're an
And
early riser?
I've always been an early bird. Sometimes what did my dad used to say? He's like, it's hard to stay out with the night owls and hoot when you got to wake up with the morning doves.
Oh, my dad had a different phrase. He was like, you can't fly with the owls at night and soar with the eagles in the morning. That was kind of, yeah, similar though.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah, same thing, right? So yeah, I love mornings. I love watching the sunrise. It makes me very,
Mm,
I love that calm and kind of how the weather feels, like the day feels, and it's usually quiet.
yeah, it breaks. I love it.
Mhm.
Um, in what ways do you deepen and nurture your spiritual connection?
It's
Not,
just so hard. And it was because, my family were empiricists, right? Like we're very like tangible. And I remember my dad and I sitting at the base of my mom's bed while she was dying. And he goes, Michelle, I really believe that this is easier for people who believe that they're going someplace good. And I was like, well, where do you think she's going? And he's like, I don't know. I'm like, I believe wherever she goes, she's going to be waiting for you, daddy. And he goes, that might be good enough. And I
that
was like,
might,
okay.
yes, yes. It's like,
So
it doesn't have to have a label. She just is gonna,
exactly. So I
she'll
think it's
know.
just believing that there is a rhyme or a reason to what is happening. And sometimes that's all you've got.
Mm, I love that. And then this is hard, I know, particularly as a caregiver and someone who's raising your niece too, is how many hours of solitude do you need to optimally function and feel happy?
Uh, if you can get it, I would say one or two. I mean, it's usually in the sleeping,
A
right?
day, yeah, yeah.
I mean, normally it's just a little bit of chaos helps the day go down, right? It's like a spoonful of sugar.
So true. I love it. Well, keep your sense of humor, Michelle. I want to thank you for your vulnerability. I want to thank you for your expertise as a serial caregiver and a person who's worked in marketing, advertising, and disrupting the caregiving marketing space because, there is a little bit of a disconnect sometimes between
Mm.
like, yeah, the target market, and we are often the decision makers for what is going to be bought and purchased.
We
So
are
I
the
think
decision makers.
yes, yes. So it's so important that to see caregivers and
Yeah.
yeah. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing you on. And of course I look forward to continuing to work with you through Circle Love and
It's
the
going
things
to
that we're
be
doing.
so much fun. We're so going to make an impact.
I'm
We're
gonna
so going
see
to do it,
you.
Elizabeth.
I think by the time this airs, I've already seen you at the Care Colloquium, but you're
I
gonna
love
be
that
the
you can. Yeah, I'm glad that you can say that word. I can't say that word.
Well, yeah, I can't spell it, but I can say it. I misspell it every time I write
I
it.
know.
So, but I'm very excited because it's gonna.
I know.
I'm almost worried that my brain's gonna hurt too much by all the meeting of the minds together, and so I just want to just be able to be present and take it all in.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, we are also fortunate that this is being put on by Kimberly.
Yeah, Kimberly
It,
Whiter. We'll link to her episode too.
please
Yeah.
do, because as we all need to really push in to make a change. I think there's a lot of smart, talented people who've been exactly where you and I sit, and I think the more we collaborate together, the more that we work together, and there is so much space to help people. And if we keep that as our whole mission, as our purpose, I am here to help and I come in peace. Let's do it.
Abundance. Yes, abundance mindset.
Abundance is the right word. Yes.
Yeah.
Go
And you can
girl.
tell right away when people have a mindset of abundance or
Yeah.
not. And I think clearly the people come to this it's an abundance colloquium in my book.
Yeah.
So I love
Exactly.
it.
We are so blessed. I
I
am
love it.
so happy and so blessed that you're in my world. Thank you for taking time with
Yeah,
me
thank
and
you.
for spreading the good word, like that we can do this. Care is
It's
good.
it's
Care is
hard. Yeah, we're stronger together for sure.
100%, sister.
All right. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you too. I look forward to seeing you soon.